I would encourage you as we study, as you do your personal study, hopefully, that you will keep the big picture in mind as we work through the prophet Isaiah. And what is the big picture?
Right.
Messiah.
I heard it.
Messiah?
The Messiah.
Yes.
That's the big picture. You must keep that in mind, or you'll go bananas. Now remember, we already have the picture. They didn't. Now keep that in mind. We are trying to figure out how the picture came together. It's already together. They were in the process of making the picture, if I may use that illustration. Keep that in mind as you study. Okay? All right, chapter 3. I don't know, by the way, I learned last week, that this class is being sent out live, audible, not visual. So whatever, okay? All right. Someone, I guess we'll go ahead and, I don't know really how to do this. Let's just, someone read the whole section, chapter 3, 1 through 7. 1 through 7. Isaiah chapter 3, 1 through 7.
The Lord of hosts takes away from Jerusalem and from Judah the stock and the store, the whole supply of bread and the whole supply of water, the mighty man and the man of war, the judge and the prophet and the diviner and the elder, the captain of 50 and the honorable man, the counselor and the skillful orator, and the expert enchanter. I will give children to be their princes, and babes shall rule over them. The people will be oppressed, everyone by another, and everyone by his neighbor. The child will be insolent toward the elder, and debased toward the honorable. When a man takes hold of his brother in the house of his father, saying, You have clothed to be our ruler, and let these rulers be under your power. In that day he will protest, saying, I cannot cure your ills, for in my house is neither food nor clothing. Do not make me a ruler of people.
Okay, through 7? Okay, very good. Now, let's go back and see if we can make some sense of this. One thing that I have learned, class, that hopefully maybe it will help you. Jeremiah and Ezekiel helps us to understand a lot of this. And here's what I mean. Isaiah is talking about what's going to happen, particularly in the dealing with the destruction of Jerusalem in 586 BC. Ezekiel and Jeremiah deal with it happening. And that's helped me in the study. I've almost finished reading Jeremiah, and it helped me to understand Isaiah. Now, did you get what I said? And I'll show you this as we proceed here, all right? I don't know, class, except how to do this. Just go back and just reread this section at a time. And try to make some, and I don't mean to say this in a derogatory sense, to try to make some sense of it as we look at it. Okay? Behold, the Lord of hosts, take away from Jerusalem and Judah. Remember, in chapter 1 and verse 1 and 2, this whole section is dealing primarily with Jerusalem and Judah. In about 721 BC, the northern kingdom called Israel was taken into Assyrian captivity. Let me share this with you. From the date of about 606 to 586, this is all BC, Jerusalem was taken into Babylonian captivity. Isaiah is dealing with that prophetically. Jeremiah and Ezekiel are dealing with it as it happened. All right, what is he talking about here? What is he talking about? All right, in verse 2, the mighty men and the men of war, the judge and the prophets and the diviner of the elders. Okay, let me, I've got two copies of, if you please, of Isaiah 1. Then I've got a blown up copy of it here. Okay, a little bit better. Okay. Let's see. In the first part, second part of verse 1, the stock and the store, the whole supply of bread, and the whole supply of the water. In 2 Kings chapter 25, under the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, that's exactly what happened. Now, some of your Bibles, I don't know whether your tablets or your phone has cross references or not. I know the printed Bible does. And some of your Bibles may have those references. He goes on and says, the mighty men and the men of war. Well, will judge and the prophet and the diviner and the elder. Again, in 2 Kings chapter 24, what happened during the time that Nebuchadnezzar was in the process of taking Judah away and ultimately destroying Jerusalem. This is what he's talking about, obviously. He goes on and says, the captain of the 50 and the honorable men and the council and the skilled artisan, the expert enchanter. Verse 4 is interesting. I will give children to be their princes, and babes will rule over them. From the time of Isaiah, or the last prophet under Isaiah was Ezekiel. From there until Josiah, the oldest judge, or the oldest king, I guess, was 25. The youngest was 8. That's interesting. That's exactly what he says here was going to take place. Now, class, the only way that I can explain to you that I learned that is through studying. It didn't come out of a little Tweety bird. And it's interesting. The more that you see how this unfolds, it's not simply a matter of a shot in the dark. It is exactly what God said would take place. He is trying to warn Judah and Jerusalem. And this is something, again, that I constantly see. And we're going to see that later. Some of you have already read Isaiah. All right, Don?
You know, going back to the chapter 1 that you're referring to, this was written, this was prophesied during, from anywhere from Uzzah, all the way to Hezekiah.
Right.
So what you're basically saying is that 2 Kings 25 and 2 Kings 24 is prophetic because it had not occurred yet while this was writing, because we've finished up with Hezekiah, and then by tradition Manasseh had sawed Isaiah.
No, 2 Kings 24 and 25 is happening.
Yeah, that's real.
Is happening.
Yeah, I understand that, but
But
Isaiah
is prophetically talking about it. Yes, right.
You know, he's speaking in the future with this because he's prophesying at a time that it has not happened yet. It's about to happen.
Exactly right. And again, what is interesting is that Ezekiel and Jeremiah show that it came to pass. It was true. You have to keep in mind, and all I can do is share with you what I'm learning. If you can do a better job, man, come right on up. You have to keep in mind, this is something that I constantly see. All the nations around them, every nation that stood in God's way, what happened to them? Some don't even exist today. And yet Judah and Jerusalem was one of his worst enemies. What happened to them? During this time of Jeremiah and Ezekiel. Oh, they were punished. The city was destroyed. It was rebuilt. But remember, we talked about this last week. You cannot keep this out of your mind. Ultimately, Jerusalem was flattened, was destroyed. The temple was destroyed. The Jews were finished as God's chosen people to bring forth the Messiah. You must keep that in mind. Not at this time. He, as I keep going back, I'm sorry, maybe a broken record. In Acts 13, Paul said in his sermon, God put up with them. He had to, because of the promise he made to Abraham going back to Genesis chapter 12. You cannot lose sight of that. The 39 books of the Old Testament, it took me years, and I'm still trying to understand it, to see what that 39 books are doing. It is the unfolding of God's eternal purpose before time began, but began to be promised through the seed of Abraham. I hope that may help you in your personal study. Betty?
In chapter 3, verse 1, that's talking about the famine. They were so hungry that they killed their own babies and ate them. And Jeremiah talks about being put in punishment in chains, and men would sneak him some bread.
Okay, as I say, Jeremiah, 2 Kings 24-25, Jeremiah and Ezekiel, all of those merged together. And if you want to get a handle on that, you're not going to get it in this 45-minute class. I'll guarantee you that. You're not going to get it. This will help us, hopefully, to understand the making of our salvation. All right, let's see. He goes on and talks about in verse 6, when the men take hold of his brother and the house of his father, saying, you have clothing, you be our ruler, let these ruins be under your power. In that day they will protest, saying, I cannot cure your ills, for in my house is neither food nor clothing. Do not make me a ruler of the people. What do you think he's talking about here? Now, I realize this may be Greek. Where's the leadership?
Yeah.
Where's the leadership? Well, what leadership they had, some of it was poor, and some of it was already taken into captivity. And so they were desperate for somebody to step forward and be their leader. And we're going to see that a little bit later. That's my understanding of what he's talking about here. In light of what has happened. Again, I repeat, you cannot separate. In fact, I would highly recommend, if any of you are taking any notes or anybody that's listening, if you will read 2 Chronicles 26 through really the end of Chronicles, and the corresponding history in 2 Kings. You cannot understand this without having an understanding of that. 2 Chronicles beginning about chapter 26 through the end, and the corresponding chapters in 2 Kings, which is probably 20, maybe 20, somewhere in that area. That will help you if you really want to try to understand this. All right, he moves on in chapter 3. He is talking now, it would appear, in verses 8 through 15, the reason why the judgment is coming upon Jerusalem and Judah. All right, would someone read verses 8 through, I'll tell you what, let's do. Let's break this down a little bit. Let's read 8 and 9. Isaiah 3, verses 8 and 9. Somebody?
For Jerusalem has stumbled and Judah has fallen, because their speech and their actions are against the Lord, to rebel against his glorious presence. The expression of their faces bears witness against them, and they display their sin like Sodom. They do not even conceal it. Woe to them, for they have brought evil on themselves.
That's interesting. How did Sodom show itself?
Blatantly.
Well, how? Chapter 19 of Genesis.
Homosexuality.
They came to, was it Lot's house? Was it Lot's house? Knocked on the door. Remember? I mean, blatantly, openly. That's what he says Israel has done. They have come to the point there's no shame. Who are these people? Who is Judah and Jerusalem?
God's chosen.
Who is it? Who are they?
God's chosen.
Well, okay, they're God's chosen people to bring forth the Messiah. What has he done for them from this point back?
Taking care of them.
Taking care of them. Where were they 400 years?
In captivity in Egypt.
What happened to the 10 plagues? How many of those 10 plagues fell upon them?
In the first 3.
None.
That's the first couple.
None.
The first few fell on the Israelites because at one point Moses says, now I'm going to make a distinction.
Well, okay, all right, okay. But basically, God protected them. But basically, is what it boils down to. And yet we talked about when they, and I made this comment last week, I think, when they crossed the river and got dried, well, they didn't get wet in the first place. But anyway, what I'm showing you, just as soon as they got across the river, everything was honky-dory and they were jumping up and down, happy. What do they want to do? Go back to Egypt. And you know what you and I would have done? Had we been in charge? Let them go. Let them go. But he couldn't. This is what he's talking about here. And it got progressively worse. How many judges were there in the book of Judges? Well, quote, spiritual leader. It was about 15 of them, give or take. I can't remember exactly. Okay. And what were they doing? Bringing them back, bringing them back, bringing them back, bringing them back. This is what he's talking about. Now they come to the point that they have the same mindset as Sodom and Gomorrah. There's no shame. All right, Don, go ahead.
In Revelation chapter 17, verse 1, it uses a term term is, I'm just looking in my my mini concordance at the back here, the great harlot. If I remember correctly, and I'm not prepared for this, but I think in Judges chapter 2, verse 16 or 14, it mentions the concept of a harlot for the first time.
Okay.
The term harlot, 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 harlot goes throughout the Old Testament after they got into the Promised Land. They were constantly going after these idols.
These gods.
This is the reason why this is happening. And basically, when you're talking about them acting like Sodom and Gomorrah, basically having no restraint to their immorality, it is because they were constantly going after these pagan gods after they got out of Egypt.
Okay.
And the judges had to deal with it. And this is not a new subject.
No, exactly.
This has gone on forever.
Right. And there's a reason for that. Now, I don't mean there's a reason for their sins. There's a reason why God put up with them. That's what we cannot lose sight of. We must, I'm talking about myself now, whether you or not, that's left up to you. All right, let's break it down. Let's go to verses 10 through 12, chapter 3 of Isaiah.
Say to the righteous that it will go well with them, for they will eat the fruit of their actions. Woe to the wicked, it will go badly with him, for what he deserves will be done to him. O my people, their oppressors are children, and women rule over them. O my people, those who guide you lead you astray, and confuse the direction of your paths.
What law is he talking about in those verses 10 through 12? Galatians 6, verses 7 and 8. What law is he talking about? The law of sowing and reaping. He's trying to give the righteous some encouragement. And then in verse 11, woe to the wicked. The law of sowing and reaping. It has the good side and the bad side. Would seem to be what I understand. All right, now, look at verses 13 through 15. Somebody?
The Lord stands up to plead and stands to judge the people. The Lord will enter into judgment with the elders of his people and his princes, for you have eaten up the vineyard. The plunder of the poor is in your houses. What do you mean by what? Crushing my people and grinding the faces of the poor, says the Lord of hosts.
Verse 13 to me is interesting. When you stand up for something, it depends on the situation. But did you notice here? And the Lord stands up to plead and stands to judge the people. Why? What follows? We read in Ezekiel chapter 34 some time ago, the woe upon the elders. And they were doing the very thing that is described here. No organization rises above the quality of its leaders. That's not politics, that is a fact. The church is not exempt from that either. We understand that. And here he is simply saying, and we brought out before, very early on in the teaching, God has a special, I guess I would say special place for the widows and the orphans. Why? Why? Well, just common sense. Common sense. Those of you that have been in law enforcement or in dealing with people, who usually took the worst? Those type people. Women. And he's talking about right here, the same thing. Same thing. All right, any thoughts or comments?
Frank? The atheist will argue that the God of the Bible is a mean, nasty God and is cruel, and therefore he's not all good because he's doing these horrible things to these sweet, innocent people. Well, by studying this, we understand that the atheist is speaking nonsense. They are not sweet, nice people here. There are people that are guilty of sexual immorality. They're guilty of worshiping pagan idols. They're oppressing the poor. They're oppressing the widow. Basically, they're wicked, and God over and over again for over 1,000 years tried to turn them around, and they would not hear it because they were rebellious to the point, in Isaiah chapter 59, he would not hear their prayers because they were in rebellion. But by studying this, we basically inoculate ourselves against the false doctrines of atheism, the false doctrines of paganism, the false doctrines of humanism.
Okay, when we went back and when we read Isaiah chapter 1, remember we also read over in 1 Corinthians chapter 11 the same mindset they had toward the Lord's Supper, toward the communion. We have to be careful that we do not, let me say what I'm trying to say, that we do not learn from this, but rather that we do learn. Boy, those guys were bad. God put up with them. Is he putting up with us?
Yes.
Is he putting up with us? All right, let's look at, let's see, oh boy, let me see. This is quite interesting. Well, I think this pretty well, let's go 16 all the way through 23. Isaiah chapter 3, 16 through 23. Now listen carefully to what he's describing here, please. Somebody?
The Lord arises to contend and stands to judge the people. The Lord enters into judgment with the elders and princes of his people. It is you who have devoured the vineyard. The plunder of the poor is in your houses.
No, wait, are you in 3:16?
I started with 13.
Okay, that's okay.
1:16.
Go ahead. Okay.
Moreover, the Lord said, because the daughters...
Now, I'm sorry. Let me stop right here. He's talking about the daughters or the females.
Right.
This is interesting. And some of you see, when I read this over and over and over, I mean, it pretty well explains itself. All right, Deborah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Moreover, the Lord said, because the daughters of Zion are proud and walk with heads held high and seductive eyes and go along with mincing steps and tinkle the bangles on their feet, therefore the Lord will afflict the scalp of the daughters of Zion with scabs, and the Lord will make their foreheads bare. In that day the Lord will take away the beauty of their anklets, headbands, crescent ornaments, dangling earrings, bracelets, veils, headdresses, ankle chains, sashes, perfume boxes, amulets, finger rings, nose rings, festal robes, outer tunics, cloaks, money purses, hand mirrors, undergarments, turbans, and veils.
Is that through 23?
Yes.
Okay. There it is. I mean, how can you comment on that? And it starts back in that verse 16, because the daughters of the Zion are haughty and walk with outstretched necks. This is how they dressed. And most of these are associated with pagan environment. One interesting point here, let me see if I can find it. I thought I had it marked down. Well, that may be in another place. There are some 21 different things here he talks about. All right, now the remainder of the chapter, including chapter 4 and verse 1, is the consequences. All right, will someone read chapter 3 of Isaiah 24 through chapter 4 and verse 1?
Instead of perfume, there will be rottenness, and instead of a belt, a rope, and instead of well-set hair, baldness, and instead of a rich robe, a skirt of sackcloth, and branding instead of beauty. Your men shall fall by the sword, and your mighty men in battle. And her gates shall lament and mourn, empty she shall sit on the ground. And 7 women will take hold of one man in that day, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own clothes, only let us be called by your name. Take away our reproach.
Or is he simply showing here what's going to happen instead of their luxury, whatever you want to call it? Now that verse 1 of chapter 4 may be a little. This is what I have understood in my studying. If you have studied and learned something different, please share it. What happened to most of the men?
They died.
They died. They died. And so here is 7 women took hold of one man and said, we will eat our own food and we will wear our own apparel. We simply ask from you one thing. And what's that?
Call by your name.
Children. Children, let us be called by your name and take away our reproach. Which one, some of you know this better than I do. Who was it that was it Rachel that was burdened because she was childless?
So was it Rachel and
What was it, Rachel? Okay, some of you know more about that than I do, and Hannah, right. Okay, that evidently is what they're talking about. What this shows you, class, and this again is documented in Kings and Ezekiel and Jeremiah. This is what's going to happen, and those chapters show us it did happen. I have never, in my studying, put that connection like I'm doing it now. I had never saw that. Okay? All right, any thoughts? All right, Don and then Laura.
1 Peter chapter 3, verse 4 talks about what a Christian woman's beauty should be like, which is a contrast to what we read with the haughtiness.
Yeah.
Here, basically, they're to have a gentle and quiet spirit. They're not to be known because of outward adornment, the arrogance, when we have women that basically are arrogant or prideful or argumentative, role reversal, women becoming men and men becoming women in our society today. God calls for us to have our adornment based upon a righteous behavior.
Right, second, you're right.
And a beautiful woman has a gentle and quiet spirit, not one that's puffed up with all sorts of adornment that we're focusing on the outward rather than the inner qualities. And God judged the Israelite women for their haughtiness as opposed to their humility and grace and compassion for the poor.
Okay. Laura?
Just a point of interest, in verse 36 it says that she will lament and mourn, empty she shall sit on the ground. When Titus destroyed Jerusalem, they struck medals about it. And on the medal was a female sitting under a palm tree in a posture of grief with the motto Judea Capta. And I think it calls back to this.
Right, verse 24 of chapter 3. This is the thought I had, instead of a sash, a rope. I learned something I was not aware of. When Jerusalem was taken captive, the people were led out in line, tied together with a rope through their ears. Wow. Now there may be other ways, but this is what one commentary thought this is what it refers to. And again, that is documented in, as I keep referring to, Kings and Chronicles, Jeremiah and Ezekiel. Betty?
They also were tied together with a fish hook in it.
Yeah, and here as well as like.
But if you fell, you would just do that.
Yeah. All right. Let's go now to chapter 4. And this is a difficult part here. Well, let's just read, first of all, just verse 2. Chapter 4 of Isaiah and verse 2. Somebody read just that one verse for the moment.
In that day, the branch of the Lord shall be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and appealing to those of Israel who have escaped.
Now, of course, in what day? Well, he's talking here, and there's some controversy, but it doesn't seem to be needed. The New King James Version, branch of the Lord. I think the American Standard says branch of, is it, Deborah, do you have, do you have the American Standard?
Yeah.
Isaiah 2 and verse 4.
Oh, 2:4.
4:2.
I'm sorry, 4:2.
In that day, the branch of the Lord will be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth will be the pride and the adornment of the survivors of Israel.
Does anybody have a different translation than that? Okay, now the question is, why all of a sudden does Isaiah bring up this branch? Now in chapter 11, which is down the road, he brings it up very clearly. And then again, Ezekiel and Jeremiah again bring up this very clear. Who is he talking about?
Christ.
Christ. There's no question about it. Now, did they understand that at that time? Maybe not. Remember, again, we are sitting in a totally different situation than they were. We have to understand that. As I said earlier, we are trying to see how the picture came together. They're trying to see it coming together. Big difference. There's no doubt, of course, that the branch here is referring to Christ. All right, let's go ahead and finish up chapter 4, 3 through 6.
Mm-hmm. And it shall come to pass that he who is left in Zion and remains in Jerusalem will be called holy, everyone who is recorded among the living in Jerusalem. When the Lord has washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion and purged the blood of Jerusalem from her midst, by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning. Then the Lord will create above every dwelling place of Mount Zion and above earth assemblies, a cloud and smoke by day, and the shining of a flaming fire by night. For all the glory there will be a covering, and there will be a tabernacle for shade in the daytime, from the heat, for a place of refuge, and for a shelter from storm and rain.
Now this is again, I'm not sure as I stand before you that I fully understand this, but let's go back. When will the Lord wash away the filth of the daughters of Zion and purify the blood of Jerusalem in their midst? When will that ultimately take place?
Christ.
in the sacrifice of Christ, our study of Hebrews. The animal sacrifices did not do that. It was a covering. So he has to be talking about the time of, again, the branch. Now, he is using terms that they were familiar with. What was the cloud and what was the smoke that they were familiar with in their history?
During the wandering.
Yeah, exactly. God taking care of them. What was the tabernacle? What was the tabernacle?
Where God put in place.
All right, it was their center of religion. What is the, quote, tabernacle today?
Church.
The church, exactly. This seems to, what I understand is, if you keep it in the context. Remember, you cannot understand any of this, class, unless you keep the big picture in mind. We obviously have the advantage because it's already been done. They did not. All right, now, we got a few minutes here. Chapter 5 is a little difficult. But let me explain something that may help, all right? Now, this is obviously Isaiah speaking, not God. I realize that Isaiah is being guided by the Holy Spirit, but this is not God speaking through Isaiah. This is Isaiah speaking. And listen to what he says. Now let me sing to my well-beloved, who would be God, okay, a song of my beloved regarding his vineyard. All right, now, what follows through verse 2 is this song. Now listen to it carefully. My well-beloved has a vineyard on a very fruitful hill. He dug it up and cleared out its stones, planted it with the choicest vine. He built a tower in its midst and also made a winepress in it. So he expected it to bring forth good grapes, but it brought forth wild grapes. What's he talking about?
Analogy.
It's an analogy. You remember when Nathan came to David?
Yeah.
With his little story? Did David get the lesson? Well, I mean, remember his point was, how did he respond to the story? That guy ought to be hung. Now, that's my phrase. He didn't say that. But that guy ought to be hung. And what did Nathan say? You are the man. And that seems to be what is going on here, because of what follows. Isaiah is now going to turn the tables back to Judah and Jerusalem. You are the man, so to speak. You might want to study that in that mind through, particularly through chapter 7. All right, beginning just very quickly, and beginning in verse 8 of chapter 5, if you're interested, that's left up to you. There are 7 woes that needs to be heeded. And then Lord willing, we'll pick up on this in our study next week. Okay.